Okay. Okay, good morning. And Jeff, looks like you found our meeting notice.
I did. I had to dig through the archives.
We were just talking about that it's so hard to get stuff through and people finding their emails, and it's really a challenge.
Yeah.
So let's go ahead and get started. Let's see. So we are recording this meeting, and I do have the transcript on, and frankly, I've been a little slow in finding an alternative to our transcripts. There are some other transcript apps. The transcripts that Zoom provides are pretty poor at this point. But anyway, thank you all for being here this morning. I just want to remind you that this should be updated here. Well, that's weird. Okay, anyway, as always, I want to thank our sponsors, Care First Health Plan, the Satellite Broadcasting Association, Valley of the Sun United Way, Khajiit, and Triad Wireless. Appreciate your support. Again, we're looking for new sponsors, so please sign up, and I will send emails out asking your support. Again, reminder that we do have our Kibitzing with Colleagues as an optional event after our regular meetings. Although today, I will tell you frankly, last week was a week from hell, so I haven't scheduled a presentation. But I'm thinking that we might actually do Kibitzing and questions. There's a lot of stuff and a lot of questions that have come up during our Kibitzing sessions. So I'm thinking that we might do that. Although, Drew, were you online? Didn't see you yet.
I'm on.
So Drew, do you want to talk about your initiative? I don't know if you saw my email this morning.
I did, yeah, and I can talk briefly about that before going into Kibitzing.
Yeah, so let's do that in lieu of our presentation this morning, if that's good for you. Okay.
That works for me.
And what is going on here? Give me just a moment, please. Huh. Well, this is very weird. Okay, well. Okay, well, I could have sworn I updated this. Anyway, so let's just jump into the meeting. And this is really weird. Anyway, let's start with any new people who have joined us this morning. Anybody new joining us this morning? I take that to be a no. Okay, so let's jump into our, so our next meeting is the 28th. Hopefully you all have also gotten an email with the meeting announcement, calendar announcements for March and April and May. If you didn't, let me know, and I'm going to try to resend that also. And then couple of things, couple of announcements again. Sharika, do you want to give us another quickie about your upcoming event on April 23rd?
Sure. Hello, everyone. Good morning. Sharika Jackson, founder, CEO of Future Stars, Inc. And we are hosting our 7th annual Hands-on STEM Fair at the Fay Gray Recreation Center in South Phoenix. Our goal is 150 young, amazing students to come out and have a great time learning STEM, eating, having fun with the DJ. So if you know kids that are in the area, send them out, have them sign up. First 100 kids get free t-shirts. Looking for volunteers and sponsors as well. So let me know. I'm available. Thanks.
Okay. And Kirk, are you online? Are you here yet? Okay, he's not here yet today.
I see him, but sometimes he's multitasking. So this is Mark. Did you want to talk about the April
do.
6th event?
I do.
So sure, I'll put a link in the chat, but on April 6th is Big Data Southwest Smart City and IoT Conference. It's a hybrid event. If you want to come live in Phoenix, it's at the Willow Conference Center, which is about 44th Street, just below Broadway, in what's called the Cotton Center, but fully hybrid is fine as well, remote if you prefer. And the morning part of the program does focus on the data center space, but the afternoon more on broadband, digital equity, workforce and economic development and elements like that. So there will be a mid-afternoon broadband panel that Jeff and I will kind of co-host, I believe, or Jeff will be on and I'll moderate or something like that. We're still working on that, but that'll be followed by a breakout from the conference main program, which will be an ATIC formative meeting of broadband providers as a working group. And so we have now sent out an invitation. I've developed a list of Arizona broadband provider contacts, companies and contacts. I'm sure it's not comprehensive, but it was somewhere in the order of 120 contacts. I did get help from Mala and Jeff on that and blasted out an invite that some of you would also have been blind copied on late last week. So hoping to host that committee and get a robust participation and kick off a new ATIC element with that. You all are going to be comped. Kirk will create a special AZBSN code and you can come to all or part of the day at your choice.
Okay, any questions for Mark about that event?
Don't have that code yet, but I'll put a link to the conference and its information in the chat.
Okay, thanks, Mark. So let's just jump into our updates. Jeff, you're on, please.
All right, so the most important update for those of you who are not aware, the U of A did advance to the Sweet 16 last night. It was a good one.
And the women are playing tonight.
They are. Well. We are loaded this year. We could have 2 teams in the Final Four, which would be pretty amazing. My voice is a little off. It's because I was screaming at the TV more than once. Okay, so here are a few updates. I've been traveling quite a bit lately, so I'm a bit behind on the email. I was in DC, I guess, 3 weeks ago. And last week I was in Dallas. I think I've already given you an update on the DC stuff. At the P3C conference. P3C are public-private partnerships. So you had a lot of companies that everything from construction to management, consultants. It was pretty interesting. As you know, we're working with KPMG pretty closely on a lot of stuff, and spent some time with them talking about the next steps on our middle mile strategic plan. And the next step on that is going to be an RFP in the next 60 to 90 days. We're going to hire what's called a neutral network operator, a company that will help us monetize this fiber that we're putting into the ground, this conduit that we're putting into the ground, help with run the operations, I should say, in terms of maintenance, and also working with the design build for future builds. I do not believe that the I-40 West was our last big announcement this year. We're incredibly excited that, you know, this is a legacy project for our governor, who's term limited at the end of this year. And we're hoping to have some more big announcements like that as we put fiber on our highways. For those of you who did not read the plan, we found that over 80% of the unserved and underserved are within 5 miles either side of our highways. We're talking interstates and state highways. So using this as a backbone and using this as a way to connect quickly, the progress they're making on I-17 is amazing. If you haven't seen the video, it's on the ACA broadband website. So this is something that's going to continue. We felt that it was important that we brought in a third-party company that has experience in these areas. If you go around the country and you look at things like fiber runs on the Pennsylvania Turnpike and some of these major facilities in the East Coast, by and large, this is the model that they use. It also, again, as I mentioned in the very beginning, helps us monetize this. We do not want to be going back to the legislature asking for money to operate this moving forward. And if it does throw off enough money, which I believe it will, it gives us the ability to make those builds into areas that probably don't make a whole lot of sense in terms of penciling out initially. But we've got a lot of small rural routes, a lot of small towns that we need to connect. And as we've talked about before, fiber, particularly fiber in the middle mile, is always our first preference.
Jeff, can you explain what you mean by monetizing?
So each one of our, let me show you this cool little party trick. This is the only thing ADOT's ever given me, so I like to make sure everybody sees it. We're putting conduit in the highways. Each one of the conduit has multiple microducts, smaller conduit within the conduit. Within one of the conduits, we're going to have fiber specifically for education purposes. Derek Masseth, who's on from the Sun Corridor, Sun Corridor will control that in terms of connecting our educational institutions. The other 6 are going to be available for carriers to go ahead and blow their own fiber through the conduit. For example, you have companies like Zayo and AT&T and Lumen that are in this business. In many cases, the process of permitting and construction is just so time-consuming and expensive. We're really blowing through that quickly. So they'll have the ability to get more fiber. This fiber will connect every couple miles. So every city, town, digital billboard, cell phone tower will be within close to this fiber. What we aim to do is create competition on these routes. So you have multiple carriers going into, say, Winslow, Arizona. And if you're a CLEC wanting to set up shop in Winslow, Arizona, you're going to have multiple options for backhaul. So this is the plan. You're going to see a lot of this orange stuff on the side of our highways, hopefully. And by monetizing it, by leasing these conduits to a Zayo or a Lumen or an AT&T or a Verizon, what that does is it provides funding for the operations and maintenance of this network. So again, we're not running to the legislature asking for money. We're in a situation now where the legislature is very flush with money, which is fantastic. But for those of us who've lived in Arizona for a little while, we all know how these cycles go. We want to make sure that we have funding for the down cycles as well, and we can continue to grow this network. All right, next up, I believe Steve, I don't know if I saw Mark, I didn't see you, but we had our Navajo Nation Broadband Summit on Friday, which was incredibly productive. This is a third in a series of meetings with Navajo Nation leaders. We were very blessed to have Vice President Leiser come to our facility in Phoenix. And I got a chance to spend some time with him. Amazing guy, understands the business side of this better than very few politicians I've met with. President Nez joined remotely. Their Speaker of their House unfortunately couldn't make it. We had many of their delegates and other leaders from the Navajo Nation. We had carriers on. We had a good group in attendance and a big group remotely. We talked a lot about strategy with the Navajo Nation. For those of you who do not know, they have allocated $208 million for broadband, which is really exciting. The key, I think, for any part of the state, but particularly a very rural area like that, is for all of us to work together. The state of Arizona, in terms of building on I-40, the Navajo Nation, they have a great middle mile project, for example, underway with E-rate funding. Our counties, Navajo County, Apache County, Coconino County, all at the table. One of our organizers, Supervisor Lena Fowler, is from Coconino County. We had multiple Coconino County supervisors at this meeting live, which was great. I think a lot of them like to get out of Flagstaff when it's cold, and I don't blame them. Believe me, I'm going up there this summer. So we really started talking about what's going on. What's interesting about the Navajo Nation, and this is something I talk to our friends in DC about a lot, who aren't familiar with Arizona, is it is roughly the size of West Virginia. And it goes through multiple states. So in addition to myself, I had my counterpart, Rebecca Dilge from Utah come down, and my counterpart Gar from New Mexico, actually in the facility, talking about how we can all work together, how we can connect. Colorado got a last minute invite and they were able to join remotely. But again, these big interstate solutions you're going to be hearing more about them. We're having discussions with our border states and others to talk about how we can take this federal money and tie it together and benefit the region. Arizona, New Mexico is a natural with the Navajo Nation. I think if you look at Arizona, Nevada, it's a natural in other areas. So we're definitely pushing forward. And the Navajo Nation Broadband Summit was successful. I don't know if Mark has any thoughts, but we're definitely getting the right folks at the table.
Just good to see them come together like that and talk the talk. Now it's time to walk the talk.
Yep. Yeah, they are very well funded, as we are in this instance, and if we all work together, we can solve the problem. And I'm very confident at the executive leadership. Delegate Key Allen Begay, who's one of the leaders of this organization, of these meetings, from the legislative side, is pushing. Again, if we can all work together, there's no reason we can't solve this. I will say up front, there are some challenges up on the Navajo Nation. Biggest one is rural addressing. They have allocated, I believe it's $20 million to solve this problem. Once we get, that's a big step in getting to the most rural parts. And quite frankly, for those of you who are unaware, Chris Vicente, who worked with the Navajo Nation, recently resigned. Chris was a guy I worked with constantly, consider him a friend, and he took a great job with NTIA, working with them. So we'll have another friend in DC. But that being said, losing him up there was a blow. They did announce a new broadband person. I can't remember her name off the top of my head, but had a chance to speak with her. So again, this is a big part of the state, and we're seeing some progress. Last but not least, probably we're starting to talk to different folks about our upcoming $100 million in digital equity funding. We've met with great groups like Common Sense Media. We've read with Google and Dell and others that are interested in this. Last week we had an interesting meeting with the folks from ASU. They have a person over there, Erin Carton Jordan, who is top of the food chain in terms of working on these problems. She seems to really have a good grasp on what's going on, and so these discussions will continue as we formulate our plan. We have meetings coming up with our contacts in DC from these different organizations to talk about what we'd like to do, and we're going to take some direction on this, but ultimately we'll do it the way that benefits Arizona. So a lot. I'm sorry if I'm just regurgitating here, but we've got a lot of stuff going on. I'd be happy to answer any questions if anybody has any.
Okay, any questions for Jeff?
Yes, this is Cindy. Have you selected an entity to develop the digital equity plan for the state?
We have not selected anyone as of today.
Do you have timing on that? Roughly?
Here's a challenge, Cindy. The governor's office recently appointed a new infrastructure czar, I guess would be the term I would use. And this is part of the IIJA. This is one of the requirements. I believe it was about a week ago they announced her. So I just started discussing with her the broadband side of this thing. So obviously she's going to have a role in what we do with this, and definitely more to come on that.
Real good. Thank you.
Okay. Other questions for Jeff? Going once? Going twice?
Mark here. So last week you weren't here, and so your ears may have been burning. There was some discussion about whether you needed help from us or a group of us on thinking about the $192 million in Treasury funds coming our way. I suggested that you probably knew pretty well that there'd be some split between maybe additional middle mile projects and maybe refreshing the grant funding. But there certainly were questions on the table about that and about any assistance you might need.
Yeah, Mark, as I mentioned to Steve last week, we're definitely working on that. In fact, I have a meeting with Treasury, I believe, on Thursday to talk about different options. I mean, the key is to make sure we're in compliance. The good news is that when I was in DC, of all the programs that were talked about, that is by far the most flexible. What we have to do is we have to look at where we know there's a lot of projects. I mean, as you guys know, with the infrastructure, the ABDG grant, we had $100 million. We have $100 million to give out. We had $440 million worth of projects. Part of this is matching projects with funding programs to make sure that we maximize that. So there are certain projects that go across many boundaries that are able to be funded by BEAD funding or middle mile funding or funding for our Native American tribes. There are other ones that make a whole heck of a lot of sense, but quite frankly, don't qualify for those programs. The Treasury funding gives us a lot of flexibility in what we do. So we're looking at this at a high level, but also at a project level to try to understand the best way to do this. It's almost like putting a puzzle together in terms of how we're doing it. And as we move forward with the grants, they're going to become more and more micro as we look at very, very small communities. So trying to come up with a strategy that allows us to roll that direction is what we're doing. To your point, I believe that there will be a combination of both. My suggestion to Steve, to make sure that we don't have any blind spots rather than have an open discussion about this, is if the AZBSN and ATIC wanted to come up with a list of maybe half a dozen recommendations or less about how to spend that money. I mean, that's certainly I would read and consider, and I could bring into the discussions. Again, I'm a big believer in, I certainly don't have all the answers. And if I have any blind spots in terms of what we could use the money for, what we should use the money for, I'd love to hear it. So if y'all were able to put that together, I definitely would appreciate that.
So Jeff, can you just do a quick overview of what that money is and how it can be used?
Mark, I can certainly give you a presentation on that, but that would take a lot longer. Just know that it's very flexible and what we can do with it. We have the ability to look at both things like fiber on highways, grants. There's a lot, and those are the discussions we're having with Treasury is how far those boundaries can be pushed in terms of what we do with it. This is by far our most flexible funding, and from our perspective, we want to make sure that we spend this in the right way. $192 million is a lot of money, but when you start looking at the number of projects that do not qualify for other funding sources, it'll go very quickly.
Okay. Any other questions?
Steve, just to add to that this is $10 billion that did precede the infrastructure plan, came out of an earlier legislative package that Treasury had, and they did launch that, and Jeff did submit, as other entities, some initial requests for the allocation and maybe parts of the plan last December. But every state got at least 100. I think the smallest was 106. The largest was California, 540 million. So Arizona, 192. But the other element to it that we haven't discussed here is that every tribal entity was given an allocation of $167,000 that they did have to request by December 27th. But that was an additional element. I don't know how many Arizona tribes or eligible entities managed to get theirs in. I unfortunately know of some, not here, but in some other states I work in, that simply didn't get it together to ask for it. But there will be tribal projects on a smaller scale, and that tribal money can be infrastructure, though that's not a lot for it. It can be community center or digital equity.
Hey, Mark, that's a really good point. And that is something I'll bring up with Treasury on Thursday, is exactly what tribes did in fact get
Right.
that money in. Yeah, the total amount, I think it's $192,222,000 $2 or something. It's some weird metric like that. But yeah, the opportunity to do something really unique with this because of the flexibility is there. We're you know, if there's a great idea or solution out there that we're just not seeing, I'd love to get your feedback on it. And you know, this is something that's going to happen quickly. You know, my conversation with the gentleman who runs that program in DC was they want to get this money out. The administration wants to see this money out. They want shovel-ready projects. They want to see this thing getting done, which is music to our ears. So I think you're going to see a lot of announcements on this. The initial thing that was due on December 27th was more of an outline. And as we go to more of a plan and then an implementation, you're going to see this probably ahead of just about all other funding in terms of the actual results, you know, the shovel in the ground. So that's also something we take into consideration. Some of these projects have to be done in sequence. You know, it's great to say, you know, we want fiber to every home and, you know, XYZ little town, but if there isn't middle mile connectivity out of that town, it just doesn't matter. So, you know, that's why the middle mile plan is so important to what we're trying to do in the state.
Any other questions? I'm sorry, go ahead.
Steve, one last thing, and I haven't been here in a couple weeks. Our mapping group is definitely moving forward with some momentum. We have some really great folks that from different departments within the state of Arizona. Our leader, Jenna, from the State Land Department, is a GIS expert. She spends time nationally on this, so we're very blessed to have her. We are getting data from a lot of different sources. We're evaluating different sources. We've had vendors in to talk to us about it. We're in a great position to put together something. The goal is to have this done by the end of the fiscal year, which is June 30th. Obviously, this is an evolving process, and we'll always be adding data to the map. But the goal is to have a map that is worthy of challenging the FCC maps, and that's really our challenge.
And Jeff, we talked months ago about my being involved in that. I guess I would like to ask if I could be. And I happen to be doing some client work elsewhere on sourcing for different kinds of data. So I may have some contributions to make.
Mark, love it. You know, we're trying to work on getting something together. We have, you know, kind of a beta or a skeleton version out. We're still debating the different data sources. So
Right.
A lot of this was just getting the funding to do this and getting the people together to do this. I think we're there. So we're about ready to start reaching out to yourself and others, you know, some of the carriers and some of the others in the industry who have, you know, decades of knowledge in this area. So, you know,
Great.
Stay tuned.
Okay, thanks, Jeff.
Thanks.
Let's move on.
Hey, Steve.
Yes,
This is
sure.
Kirk. Sorry about that. I was multitasking, like Mark said, herding cats on a speaker panel call. Jeff, just amazing work, as we all know. It's kind of funny to watch Cindy and Aaron's heads go up and down at the same time while you're talking about the mapping. Can we have Aaron make a little announcement too as to her new role, which is about as synergistic as what we're talking about in the digital equity space as possible? Real quick, Steve.
Yeah, we're going to do that. I've been in communication with Aaron and
You have
actually
Aaron on
her to do a
today's agenda.
presentation about the task force,
Oh,
about her initiative and what she's
but she
doing.
can say a couple things right this second, can't she? Do
Okay,
your announcement.
Yes, let's hear from her.
Kirk, every time. First, I would just like to say that I'm really looking forward to participating in the big data event and to moderating a panel. And thanks again, Kirk, for asking me to participate. I'm really excited about it. I don't want to take time out of your calendar today, Steve. I recognize that it's a really quite fully packed agenda. Just very briefly, I'm stepping into the managing director role for the Digital Equity Institute. I would love to talk to anyone who is interested about making sure that we're forming a collaboration across the state so we can amplify all of our impact. And we'll talk to you more about it when we have time on the agenda.
and Aaron, maybe we can schedule that for next week.
Yes, definitely.
We've been trying for several weeks now. So let's.
Yeah, Steve, you should absolutely have Aaron on. I mean, she's replacing Dominic Papa, who I used to work with, who's just a great guy who moved the ball forward in a big way. They're doing some stuff, not just here in Arizona, but around the country, which is exciting. These are going to be great jobs for Arizona as well as an impact around the country.
Yep. So we'll try and get her. Aaron, if you can tentatively mark your calendar, and then I'll follow up with you.
Sounds good. Thanks so much.
Sure. Okay, moving on. Mala, you're on.
Okay, I just wanted to start with where we left off with a discussion about the Treasury Capital Project Funds, because I was at a Shelby webinar where they addressed this. Joey Wender, who is in charge of that project, spoke, and he is Senator Markey's. He was Senator Markey's prime aide. And before he took on this role of working on the Treasury grant, the fund is not as well publicized and as it should be, but it has a lot of flexibility. It allows for any project that enables work, education, or health monitoring. If they are directly connected with that project would be eligible. It does have administrative costs that can be taken care of, about 5% of the total project fund, that the total grant fund that has been asked for. And it allows not only for broadband infrastructure building, but also for devices, equipment, construction. Things that were not eligible in other projects are all eligible here. It also specifies that it should have at least 100 Mbps a download and an upload between 20 and 100. Symmetrical is good, but if it's not, asymmetrical with 100 up, 100 down, and 20 to 100 up would be good. It can be used to improve libraries or schools, but not to construct them. Any improvements. It allows for digital literacy training programs. It also allows for telehealth and health-related projects. Anything that would help in improving the community and the public, that has public use of the funds, would be accepted. It's a 3-step process. The first step was the submission of an application, and I think that was the December deadline. And there is an execution of a grant agreement with Treasury that each state has to do. But also the state can submit grant plans to the Treasury, and this plan does not have to be just a one-time submission. For example, if a state wants to submit a general state plan and include maybe just 2 or 3 counties in the first go round, and then submit a second plan for the rest of them, that's fine too. They will accept it piecemeal. So there is a lot of flexibility in this. I put two links in the chat, one for the general applicants and the other for the tribal applicants. That has more details on the whole application process. They have to create a grant portal, and the submission has to be through the grant portal. They have 365 days deadline after the grant portal has opened up. I don't have the deadline dates on me right now. I didn't take that down while I was attending the webinar, but it should be in the links that I provided. So that's a little bit more about that Treasury capital funds, which we need to really, ramp up and do something about, because it's available. That money is available right now. Okay, moving on to what I'm sweating to the finish line. This is March 22nd. Tomorrow is the deadline for submitting E-rate applications for the general applicant schools and libraries. They have extended new tribal library applicants deadline to May 26th. So if a tribal library or a chapter house has never applied, before, but they intend to apply this time. That deadline is May 26th. So we have time to recruit and get more tribal libraries to apply for the grant for E-rate. And E-rate has provided, quite a lot of funds for the state. We've had about, I want to say $1.6 billion that has come to the state in these last 20 years for internet access, for devices, not in the sense of laptops and things like that, but routers and hubs and switches and those kind of things. And the median price per Mbps has dropped from $4.80 to $1.03, $1.39. So that has also, E-rate has helped in doing that as well. And it's helped bring the prices down for wireless access points by about 49% from $1,400 to $700 per wireless access point. So there's been a lot of improvement in the state and in the country because of E-rate dollars. The ECF project, they had the FCC has committed over $4.6 billion from the time it was launched. Of that, Arizona has received funding commitment for $134 million. And Arizona is 8th nationally in the receipt of ECF funding. This is great because all our schools and libraries are applying for ECF. They applied for it in the 2 rounds of applications that was put up. And most of the projects have been funded. 86% of the projects have been funded. The rest are under review and will be funded. And as I had announced earlier, FCC accepted the requests made by Shelby, by SECA, which is the State E-rate Coordinators Alliance, and American Library Association to extend the deadline and the deadline for utilization of this money. And that has been extended to June 30th of 2023. So those are all good news. As far as EBB, which is now ACP, the Affordable Connectivity Program, I'm sorry, my grandson is really howling in the background. If you hear him, it's because he's getting ready to go to school and throwing temper tantrums. So forgive me if you're hearing those noises. The ACP, it's moving along steadily. Last week, we had another 4,000, between 4,000 to 5,000 applicants that signed up. I will put the enrollment tracker in the chat as soon as I finish speaking. As of today, as of 14th of March, we have had 234,000 households that have signed up to be on, to receive funding or discounted internet access. So any questions? Be happy to take it. Otherwise, back to you, Steve. Any
Okay.
questions?
Any questions for Mala?
Awesome job, Mala. You're amazing.
Okay.
Thank you.
Holly or Nicole, do you have anything? And we're going to jump down to Leah Marquez Peterson is apparently on the line. We haven't heard from her for a while. But Holly, you have anything you want to add?
I'm not sure Holly is on.
Okay.
Holly and Nicole are en route to the PLA, the Public Library Association conference person. So.
Okay. So Cindy, we'll hold you until after we hear from Leah. Leah, I haven't seen you in a while. I understand you're online. Would you like to kind of give us an update of what's happening?
Good morning, Steve. Hopefully you can hear me okay. I'm
Yep.
in the car. Okay,
Yep.
great. No real update. I just wanted to thank Jeff for the invitation to speak at the Broadband Initiative for the Navajo Nation meeting he hosted on Friday. I really enjoyed speaking and participating and kind of explaining the role of the Corporation Commission. But no real update here unless there are particular questions.
So Leah, what's the latest with looking at the docket and looking at some changes to the Universal Service Fund?
It's still something that is pending. There are still a number of states that are making changes, as you know, moving it from landline to broadband. So our legal has taken a stab at it, and we just need to get that moving forward again. We've had a couple other hot items on our agenda lately.
Do you have any idea about timing or what's next steps or anything you need from us?
Not at this point, no. I do appreciate the meeting that we had where a lot of different folks dialed in to hear and to give perspective. But no, I think no action at this time is needed.
Okay, thank you, Leah. Glad you could join us today. I know as
Thank
Jeff, as Kirk said, you're very busy, so appreciate you taking the time to be here. Cindy, you want to give us a quickie on what's happening in digital inclusion?
Sure. So the Digital Inclusion Network under the AZBSN Task Force, we've got two entities. One is going already. It's a practitioners meeting. It happens every 2 weeks on Thursdays, where we address a topic. The most current topic we talked about was ACP, and we did create a media kit and media and resource toolkit that I will put in a link to in the chat. It has all kinds of things that can be sent out to networks about the ACP and getting people signed up. We want to keep that momentum moving forward. We're also starting another meetup space. We believe it's going to be on March 31st will be the first meeting. We haven't picked a time yet. So we'll keep Steve apprised of that, and so he can get invitations out to everybody. A number of people on our call on Mondays are also on the Pima County Strategic Plan for Digital Access, Inclusion, and Adoption. Andrew Bevington and I are co-chairing the Digital Inclusion Committee on that effort, and we're currently identifying the digital literacy assets throughout Pima County, and also gathering information from community members and organizations about some of the gaps. We're doing a gap analysis for that project. I'm also involved in a group that's talking about digital inclusion barriers experienced by older adults, and we're meeting everyone. It's not a regular meeting so far, but if you want to be involved with that, I can put my phone number and email in the chat and you can get in touch with me. I also have a Digital Inclusion Alliance blog post that describes the Digital Equity Act funding timeline, and I'll put that in the chat as well.
So Cindy, I think it's really interesting, and you've been doing a great job with this effort down here in Pima County. And I think one thing that's unique about what's happening in Pima County is that in addition to them looking at connectivity issues, as we've always talked about, the importance of digital equity and digital inclusion, and the fact that they are actually working on a county plan that includes both the connectivity side as well as digital inclusion, I think is a good example of some of the things we need to do here in the state.
Absolutely. Yep. Same thoughts here.
Yeah.
It's really good. It's a really good direction.
Yeah.
And we're getting what I'm feeling like, Steve, as I was kind of compiling my notes for a progress report over the weekend. We're actually collecting the kind of information that we'll want to feed up to the state level once the digital equity plan starts moving, because we're getting incredible anecdotal information about what's going on kind of in the trenches with people that are trying to sign up for college and Pima College and doing workforce things. We're getting a lot of information about, and we have someone on the call now who's who's PEP Inc. And they connect with laborers, agricultural workers across the state. They have to get their timesheets into the system from remote locations where they don't have internet access. So they have to kind of capture it and then drive to where they can get internet access. There's all kinds of stuff going on that we need to know about. We need to be feeding to the people that are developing the equity plan.
Thank you, Cindy.
Hey, Cindy, this is Jeff. That's a great example. I talk to people all the time about how infrastructure and digital inclusion, digital equity work hand in hand. We're working very hard right now, particularly in Yuma, to build out a very robust network, 10 gigabit symmetrical. We're working with a carrier who's going to do that. That being said, when you're in the fields, and I've spent some time in the fields out there, they're massive. And a lot of people don't know that 90% of the lettuce in the country right now is coming out of the Yuma area, which is a remarkable statistic. But overlaying our in terms of agriculture, in terms of the ability to do self-driving tractors and drones, a wireless mesh layer or something along those lines. I mean, there's several options, but also for the individual worker in the field, God forbid you have a family issue, your kid gets sick at school, or, those are the kind of things that we have to think about. So we're going to be talking to our wireless carriers as well about playing on that, but great example about how digital equity and infrastructure work together. So good stuff.
I'd like to add to that, Cindy. We've had several examples where even police officers had to drive to a library's parking lot to file a report. There are numerous examples of people in the rural areas not having access and coming to the library to make funeral arrangements for their loved ones. It is those kinds of things that are heart-wrenching, when you see, because everything requires a form to be filled, and they can't do it over the phone. They have to come to some place where they can access the internet, get the form downloaded, fill it up, even to do a funeral for their loved one. So I've got live examples like that really speak for the lack of access and the dire need in some rural communities.
Okay, we need to move on. I didn't see Janet. Are you online today? Mala, do you want to give us any updates on the telehealth and libraries initiative?
Not really too much, because we are still working. Ken Zambo, who's the project head in Pima County, is working hard to get all the bits and pieces lined up. He's got the grant money squared away. He's working with U of A to get the student nurses and their teachers' permission papers signed up. He's also working on various, all the other requirements to get the project going. So right now, we're still working on the preliminaries that we need to get lined up for the project. But we've been having weekly meetings to make sure that we're keeping each other updated on what's happening, and good quotes for the digital equipment, as well as we even had a demo from the nurse, Dr. Who is a part of the team, to show us how this information can be passed on securely from the patient to the healthcare provider without it being saved in between by any elements for the security of that data. So we're working on all those nitty-gritties. We'll get it on the road soon enough.
Okay, thank you, Mala.
And Steve, Mark
Yeah.
here.
Yeah, Mark.
So Janet has been holding monthly series of grant workshops on Tuesday mornings followed by open office hours for live Q&A that people can bring in an extended conversation, usually the Thursday right after the Tuesday sessions. And I believe that there will be a session on April 12th at 10 a.m. With Jeff, myself, and Kimber Lanning on federal grant overview.
Okay, thank you, Mark. So I want to remind you all that if you haven't, when I've been trying to send out in my email announcements listings of key things that are going on, links and key people and so forth. So if you don't get a chance to read those, I encourage you to try and keep up to date. It's a good way to do that. Not sure we have everything, but I try to keep up to date on information that people are sending me. So anyway, moving on. Sophia, I don't know if you're online. I see Kelly, you are. And I don't believe Mylan's online either.
Morning. I'm just waiting to see if Sophia is going to speak. So I will take the floor. Good morning, everyone. Updates from
Kelly,
me.
just quickly tell people who
sure.
you are.
Yes, I always forget to do that. My name is Kelly Crucy. I work in the Office of Digital Teaching and Learning for the Arizona Department of Education. It is a new office, and this week we are hoping on Wednesday to publish the data from an assessment that we did with the LEAs in November and December. So we sent this out to all of the local education agencies in the state, trying to collect information about their digital teaching and learning practices, so we can identify gaps and help be a resource and leverage the state's resources on behalf of the schools in the state. So we conducted this in November and December, and we have been putting together the data, analyzing it, and then pulling out from there the potential problems and potential solutions. So we hope to publish that this Wednesday. And Steve, what I'd like to do is send links to you, and I'd be happy to talk about them in future meetings, but we will publish a dashboard on our website where people can look through all the information. All of the information that we pulled in from the assessment is available and will be available as soon as we publish that. So Steve, I'll be in contact with you so I can help push that information out. I will also host some sessions where people can join for about a half an hour just to in a live session, get the information about the assessment and what we're doing moving forward.
Well, Kelly, you kind of took my next question, is that certainly we'd be glad to help you, whether we have our own session or a session with you of brainstorming some solutions in addition to just getting a briefing on what the findings were.
Yes, that'd be great, because what we are really trying to do is focus on the LEA community and bring the school communities together to discuss what they're doing, what is working for them, and sharing with one another what it is that they're doing, again, to be successful when it comes to digital learning. So would love to collaborate any way that we can and have discussions and brainstorm.
And so Kelly, can you just remind me, I know when you guys first started, I wasn't clear about that you're mostly focused on the teaching and learning aspect versus the infrastructure side. Am I correct about that?
The infrastructure definitely plays into it, and that's Mylan's area. And so, through this assessment, we are trying to collect data from the schools to determine, do they know how many students, which students do not have access to the internet or digital learning. And then from there, working with Mylan in his area to help bridge those gaps.
Okay, thank you. Any questions? Any questions for Kelly?
Steve, this is Jeff. I was just going to say the project that Mylan's working on is incredibly important for the state in general, in particular to what we're doing with mapping. So if he's off working on that, I have no issue with him not being on the call. He's doing a great job, and we're looking forward to continuing to collaborate with Mylan and Kelly and the team at ADE.
Okay.
There's actually a ribbon cutting for Final Mile tomorrow. So there's definitely some exciting things happening there still.
I heard about that. Good deal.
Yeah.
Hey, Sophia, how are you?
Hi, guys. That's my only announcement. I know that there's a ribbon cutting for the Final Mile tomorrow. So maybe if I see some pictures online, I'll bring them here next week.
I was going to ask, is that going to be online or is that just face-to-face?
I think it is just face to face, like they've got some media coming and some fun students and parents coming to get together and celebrate that project.
Cool.
But if I see some pictures, I will bring them here next week.
Okay. Thank you. And I don't believe Derek is here today. And Wes, I don't believe you're online. Mylan's not online. Rory, are you online? Not hearing that, then I guess not. So let's move on. And any questions or comments? So Drew Gardner, I believe you're online. You want to tell us a little bit about Common Sense and some of the resources that you've created for particularly state planning?
Yeah. Hi, everyone. My name's Drew. I'm with Common Sense, and we work mainly with educators and parents to help children, family, and teachers sort of grow up and navigate the digital world. Some of the things we've been working on recently are, well, we've been doing two projects that I think are relevant to this group. One is related to the Emergency Connectivity Fund, which Mala talked about earlier, and the other is related to the Affordable Connectivity Program, which everyone is talking about all the time. For the Affordable Connectivity Program, I have been talking to some state program administrators, particularly like WIC, the Women, Infant, and Children component of, I forget, SNAP maybe. Anyway, it's a program that makes people eligible for the ACP. Some WIC programs or other programs that confer ACP eligibility are able to text their recipients. Often these programs will text about like infant formula recalls and things of that nature. In Oregon, I think it costs about 7 cents per text message. So it can be an expensive way to get the message out. But we think, and I've written to the FCC about this in our recent comments, that federal funds, Treasury, BEAD, and this FCC grant program that's coming up, that money could be used to pay for existing government programs to text their participants about the ACP. And this would be a very good way to precisely target ACP outreach to eligible participants because those programs make their participants eligible. So if a state WIC program or if a state SNAP program or state Medicaid program has the capacity to text, we think that's a fantastic way to do ACP outreach. And we're trying to work with states to do that now. And we think government federal funds can support that. So in addition to getting funding, you also don't want to drive a whole bunch of traffic to the WIC program administrators because they're already strapped. So we want the state to have an existing landing page to sort of help all the participants sign up so it doesn't fall to the WIC program administrators. That's one thing we've been helping states talk about. The other is the Emergency Connectivity Fund, which we talked about earlier. In Arizona, currently, Mal already gave Arizona has gotten $136,000 in grant funding, and that's currently supporting 350,000 devices for students. So the Emergency Connectivity Program allows schools to give devices and connectivity, home internet service or hotspots to students that those schools or libraries have identified as not having a device or connectivity. So the school or library first has to do a digital needs assessment to identify students or patrons that lack connectivity. And then those schools can apply for a grant from the SVC and use that money to bring devices and connectivity to those people. Currently, Arizona is using this program for 350,000 devices, 77,000 connections. However, this is an emergency program, and when it runs out of funding, those devices and connections will presumably go away or need another form of support. That's a big concern of ours. However, Treasury money BEAD money. So the NTIA, the recent IIJ, all the federal money for the most part can be used to support these students. So we're proposing to states that they should consider using their capital projects fund or their ARPA money, state and local recovery money, or their BEAD money to make their own version of the emergency connectivity fund and improve on it, to allow schools to hire, or libraries to hire, technology directors. There are some states that are doing this sort of work already up in the Northeast, and the example is escaping me right now. But anyway, that's one thing that I'd love to talk more about. Yes, Mala, that's the correct number. But anyway, those are two of our recent proposals we've been talking to states about, and I'd love to talk more to anyone who's interested in hearing about these. Or we're also interviewing anyone who is interested in the ongoing need for student connectivity. We're doing a big interview project where we're going to take all this data about the Emergency Connectivity Fund and present it nicely in a map to show each state how many students they're connecting and how many are at risk of losing connectivity when the program runs out. So if you would like to talk about the ongoing importance of student connectivity, particularly on video, because we're going to try to make a nice little video, but we also just want good quotes. We want anything we can use to advocate for student connectivity. Please reach out to dgarner@commonsense.org, and I'd love to talk about it, or connect with me here. But that's my update for now, Steve.
Okay. So Drew, a couple of things. I see Elena's not on the line. And so you might want to mention, first of all, you just want to tell people briefly about Common Sense and who you guys are. And secondly is to put your contact information in the chat. And also, as I was saying, Elena's not online, I don't believe today, but she is the Arizona director, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, Elena Lowry, she's our Arizona director. I'm based in DC. Elena is based in Arizona. And yeah, Common Sense. I'll put a link to our About Us in the chat too. But we have a digital citizenship program, which is our digital inclusion training for students and teachers. It's a curriculum that it's used by 88% of Title I schools. So we have a really big footprint in the education community. And we're also looking to use that footprint to get the word out about ACP, because a lot of Title I school, any school that uses community eligibility, that offers free and reduced lunch for their whole student population, any school that does that, every single one of their students is eligible for the ACP. So we want to work with those schools to say all of your students can sign up for $30 off their internet bill. It's pretty simple. You know that they're eligible. Just direct them to either our website or the FCC's website. And that's a good way to keep your students connected. So we have a big footprint in education. And then we also, if you're a parent, you might know about us from our ratings and reviews of children's media. We're like the parent's guide to the internet, where if you want to know how violent a piece of media is, or if there's language that's inappropriate, or how adequate a video game is for your student or your child, we have a ton of reviews for those media as well. Those are educators and reviews, and then we also do research on media's impact on students. As well, we do a ton of stuff, and I'm trying to extemporize on it right now. Steve, anything I'm leaving off?
I don't think so, Drew. I think it's important for people to know that you guys do have a pretty significant national footprint with a lot of access to resources.
Yes, and we have some grant funding, so we're looking to expand our capacity to help with broadband, particularly digital equity. I was messaging Cindy earlier, but we want to help states plan for the digital equity plans and for their infrastructure spending, because we want to make sure that any connectivity that's built is going to support essential uses like education, and at a reasonable cost. So that's what we've been working with to help states.
So,
Sort of.
so that grant funding, what is that for?
That's, we're currently deciding how to use it. We might be doing some promotion of the ACP, or to hire additional staff to work directly with a few states to help them sort of understand the federal funding and the technical specifications they need to meet in order to allow proper educational uses. So that's one component right now of our grant funding.
Great. Thanks, Drew. Any questions for Drew? Okay, hearing none. I think we're about out of time for today. Does anybody have any announcements, anything they want people to know about? Hearing none, I guess we're done for today. We will do our kibitzing after the meeting, if anybody wants to stay online for a while. And with that, thank you all for being here again. And we will hopefully see you next week. Just one question. Those of you who joined the meeting today, did you all get the calendar invites in addition to my weekly announcements? Yes, no, maybe?
I had one in Outlook this morning. I'd have to check for the weeks going forward, but
Okay.
definitely had one this morning.
Okay,
Yeah, me too. I had the invite, but I'm not sure about the following one.
okay,
I had the invite also.
okay. Well, I'm just trying to find out whether people are actually getting announcements, because it's not an easy thing to do. Anyway, we are done for today. Thank you all for joining us. And again, those of you who want to stay online to kibitz, look forward to continuing our discussions. Have a good week.
Thanks all.
Thank you.